Hello there, welcome to Corellian.ranger.productions. I'm very glad to have you here, and today we're going to be doing an analysis of the essence of Star Wars storytelling. Star Wars has obviously captured the minds and imaginations of multiple generations of people, and to many, Star Wars can take on the shape of many different forms. For some, Star Wars is a soap opera, for others, Star Wars is a comedy, and for some, Star Wars is a war story. These are all correct interpretations of Star Wars, and none of these particular interpretations would make one of these definitions more correct than the other. And so I wanted to provide my own input into the conversation by looking at what exactly, from my perspective, is the essence of Star Wars storytelling. And so this video is going to be divided up into three particular sections. Section 1, exactly what is Star Wars storytelling. Section 2, we'll look at some examples of both successful and unsuccessful examples of this essence of Star Wars storytelling within Star Wars media. And then 3, this is more towards future writers within the realm, but how to implement this into your own writing. Now we begin with our first section, which discusses what exactly is Star Wars storytelling. All stories, in my personal belief, should be summarized within a sentence, preferably less than 7 words, but at maximum 10 words. This is because if you are telling a story and you can't summarize your core theme or core message within that short amount of words, you're probably too unfocused and not writing a story that will captivate the minds of your audience. But then to go from there, to focus more specifically on incorporating this essence into Star Wars storytelling, this upcoming part will be a little controversial, but I believe it to be true once you think about it a little more. All stories can be told in the Star Wars universe, but it's a matter of figuring out what aspects of the Star Wars universe best amplify your story. I'll provide some examples of what I'm talking about when it comes to all stories could be told within the Star Wars universe. I'll first begin with a tangential example that kind of relates to this, but it comes with the movie Bullet Train. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, but at the end of the film, the bullet train that they're on goes off the tracks and creates quite the set piece for the audience to take in. And during the original writing of the script writers did not have this. But after getting a producer from the John Wick franchise to come over and said, hey, you can only do a bullet train going off the rails in your setting. You can't do it anywhere else. They decided to change up their mentality and actually include this feature within their script. And so understanding of this as a basis, we can look into some more specific Star Wars examples of how they use the Star Wars universe to amplify and tell these themes and these stories the best possible way. Within my own storytelling and productions, I wanted to tell a story that focused mostly on brotherhood and camaraderie, and I felt that the Star Wars universe would be an appropriate place for this, considering the clone troopers and how they really do just embody what brotherhood and camaraderie is in a lot of regards. And so I took that and combined it with the ideas and the themes that they were being haunted by many of the things they've done in their past. Whereas we typically see clones do a lot of good things, obviously Order 66 hangs over the head for a lot of them. So you combine this with perhaps, burden of leadership, which is why I chose Commander Wolf. And then the aspect that they're all clones. All in all came together to really build on one another and being able to tell a very enticing and supportive story that captured the attention of the audience. And that's just one example from my own personal library that I'd like to touch on. And now I'm going to go into more specifically about a really good example and a really bad example of mainline Star Wars entries. To show that any sort of story can be told well as long as you figure out which aspects of the Star Wars universe are going to help amplify your story, I'm going to first look at a good example before we move on to the bad example. And that good example I want to look on is Luthen's speech and just Andor as a series as a whole. Obviously, I'm probably going to put a clip up here now.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm. Kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
And now that we've all seen this wonderful speech plenty of times, what really stands out to us is that we understand Luthen as a character. We understand Luthen's a man who's put a lot of sacrifice, he's very shadowy, and he's using methods that could be argued as immoral to an extent. Manipulation of people, withholding information, sacrificing people, only thinking of people as pawns on a larger chessboard. But he does this all in the name of, a better tomorrow. And how is this much different than something like what Anakin Skywalker and his own personal beliefs was doing? There isn't much of a difference. This speech pours all that emotion out and is an example of how attuned the writers were with the Star Wars universe. This speech doesn't tear down pre-existing lore within the Star Wars universe. It only helps to build on top of it, which is something that many other pieces of Star Wars media recently have been trying to do. They've tried to tear down pre-existing lore and contradict and make us question who these characters were and what they really stand for. And so, all in all, because Luthen's speech is an embodiment of these very interesting moral themes, highlighting the fascism of the Empire versus, the democratic nature of the rebellion, but how we have to use the fascist means to defeat the fascist empire, that is being, the Star Wars Empire, is a brilliantly well-written moment and something that many writers should look to when, creating new stories within the Star Wars universe. And so to go on the opposite end now, with a bad example, I believe it's kind of beating the dead horse now, but the sequel trilogy as a whole, right? And to kind of embody the thesis of the sequel trilogy, I'm going to play a clip right here that's going to showcase Luke Skywalker throwing his lightsaber away. And here the clip goes now. Now that you've seen the clip and we're all on the same page, what I really don't like about this particular theme is that it's a complete shock to the viewer, especially considering the last time we met Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker at the end of Episode 6 was a Jedi who had gone out of his way to really try to redeem his father, who was an incomprehensibly awful person. There was no redemption for Darth Vader. He didn't even deserve it, but Luke still saw the good in him and tried to save him. And that level of character and value in a man is something that creates such a strong impression on the audience's mind that when we come to Episode 8 and we look at Luke Skywalker just throwing away his lightsaber, it's like, what happened? You can't just jump from this character to the next without any proper explanation. There has to be some sort of gradual build-up. And obviously, if you're trying to go for shock factor, it worked, but you just left the audience confused because you've torn down such a strong character to the franchise. And they don't really provide enough of a justifiable explanation, with their own explanation being Kylo Ren was, evil and that Luke decided to kill him in his sleep but then changed his mind the last thing. It's not character consistent. It tears down pre-existing lore and does not contribute to the Star Wars universe, and is quite frankly just an insult to most people with any sort of semblance of intelligence. And considering that the core of your franchise are Star Wars fans who know their franchise very well, you just spat in their face and completely disregarded their opinion, which is never go against the grain of your fans unless you have really good reason for doing so, and they didn't have a good reason here. And kind of just looking at the sequel trilogy as a whole, the sequel trilogy doesn't have a central theme to it. There wasn't a central director guiding all of this together, and so because the sequel trilogy doesn't have a central theme to it, there is no way to amplify the theme in your movie within the Star Wars universe, because you don't have one in the first place. And if your, storytelling doesn't have a theme at all, how am I supposed to feel related? It's just hard. At best, you can create something that's just aesthetically pleasing. In a lot of ways, the sequel trilogy is very aesthetically pleasing. It's very beautifully designed in terms of its set pieces and cinematography and whatnot, but drops the ball incredibly hard in a lot of other regards. And so, tying this all together with our third section of how to implement this into your own writing and your own lore building and your story building and storytelling as a whole. You need to first understand what theme you're trying to tell in your story. You shouldn't be choosing a particular character or a particular setting just for the sake of choosing that character or setting. You need to focus on a particular theme. And so you could start, for example, with time as your theme, as Christopher Nolan does in almost all of his movies. All of his movies involve time in one way, shape, or form. And so once you understand time, you need to then ask yourself, what about time do we want to explore? Perhaps it's about the fleetingness of time and how, as we grow older, our perception of time goes by quicker and quicker. And then understanding within the Star Wars universe, how could this help? And an example of this could be the Clone Troopers. And I've kind of reused the example again, but I'm most familiar with them in my own personal writing. With the Clone Troopers, they age twice as fast as regular people. That sense of time and urgency would be twice as fast. And perhaps in your story, you illustrate how maybe this Clone Trooper develops a meaningful relationship with a lady and has a family, but because he grows twice as fast, he has half as much time with his family as a regular person would. And create this heart-wrenching story as this man's unable to see his children, grow up and be successful in this galaxy. And that is a story that doesn't involve any action. It could be a purely dramatic one and would still capture the attention of the audience and be heart-wrenching for the audience to view. And so, to kind of tie it all together, first, identify the theme of what you're trying to get at. Second, see how the Star Wars universe, or any universe you're writing with as a whole, can amplify and help support these themes. And then third, stick to that theme and be respectful to the universe and only add on. Do not tear down the universe you're working with. And to readdress the question at the beginning of the video of what is the essence of Star Wars storytelling, it's just that any story can be told in the Star Wars universe, and that's beautiful. Because many other universes and other settings, you can't tell all types of stories, but within the Star Wars universe, you truly can. And so thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to what I have to say. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And I hope that this has been an inspiration to your own writing. And if you have any comments, please, let's have a great dialogue and discussion on this topic. I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say. So take care and have a great day.